Okay, hello everyone. Curtis here again with another video talking about spirituality and stuff like that. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my high experiences that I've had somewhat recently, and also what I'll call a low experience. And I wrote a couple notes on my screen just so I don't forget anything. So I'll be reading off of those. So, what is a high experience? Well, Dr. Hawkins talked about I think some of his high experiences, and also he talked about other people who have reported them in the past, like different saints and people like that. But basically, a high experience is where you experience something. I think this is what it is. It's where you experience something that is possibly normal for a higher level of consciousness, but it's not normal for your current level of consciousness. Sort of. So it's like you're experiencing like a taste of what is to come, but it's temporary. And I mean, I guess that's what it is. I don't know. You can read what Dr. Hawkins wrote about it and hear what he said about it. But in this video, I'm going to talk about my high experiences. I had two high experiences that happened a couple months back after I had gotten back into this spiritual development and releasing blocks and stuff like that. So the first one I'm going to talk about is an experience I had in a 12-step group. For a while, I was going to a 12-step group, mostly just for fun, to see what it was all about. And yeah, I was going there every week, maybe a couple times a week. And you know, people would share and stuff like that. And Dr. Hawkins talked about how the group energy is unconditional love and all that good stuff. And I was just mostly going for fun. But one day, and as I've said in past videos, I previously suffered from bipolar disorder, but I no longer do. This is relevant to this story. So one day I went to a group and there was a woman in the group that I had not seen before. She was not a regular. And I don't even remember her name now, but she was talking very strangely. It was clear she had mental issues, kind of clear. But she was talking about how much she was suffering from different things, and at one point she said she had bipolar disorder. And instantly I felt like I had a connection with her. Because I was like, oh, I've suffered from that, and I've gotten over it. I was thinking, oh, maybe I should go tell her about how I got over it, wondering if she would be receptive to all this spiritual stuff. Well, after the meeting ended, she was talking about her bipolar disorder during her sharing period. Well, after the meeting ended, I decided to go up and talk to her. And it turns out she was not ready to hear about how I cured my bipolar disorder. She was a very overcome with negativity person. But this is my high experience, something strange happened while I was talking. As soon as I sat down to talk to her, while I was talking to her, it's as if my vision changed and I could see the essence of who she was beyond just the physical body. It's hard to explain, but basically, when I was looking in her eyes, I saw her spirit, and it was incredibly beautiful. And the beauty had absolutely nothing to do with her physical body, because physically she was not beautiful. But in her eyes, I could see, I don't even want to call it spirit, because it was just who she was. It was just who she was. It was the real her. Like, the body was not the real her, but it was in concomitance with her spirit or the real her. But as I was looking in her eyes, I saw this incredibly beautiful person, and I could see that she was perfectly beautiful. Yeah, and it was crazy. It was like I was looking at her essence beyond just the physical body, and it was perfectly beautiful. However, in her eyes, I could see the negativity in her mind. I could actually see it almost as if it was like a physical substance sticking out of her face or something. It's hard to explain. It's almost like I was looking at her simultaneously with my physical eyes seeing her physical body and like a spiritual vision seeing her spiritual essence. Her essence did not look like a body shape. It was almost like just a formless essence. I don't know how to explain it. Like a fog. Only it didn't look like anything. It was just incredibly beautiful. Um, but yeah, I was looking at her and I could see that she was very beautiful, but that unconsciously she was holding on to all these negative things that were dragging her down, and this is why she had so many mental problems. It was very clear she had several mental problems. Um, but yeah, I could see that she was perfectly beautiful. There was nothing wrong with her essence. There was nothing wrong with who she was. It was captivating. Staring into her eyes was captivating, and like I said, it had nothing to do with her physical body. Um, yeah, so I saw the essence of who she was. I saw the negativity she was holding. I could see it was almost like if you see a person that has like I don't know, like a piece of food stuck to their face from eating, or like a blotch on their face or something. Well, it's like I could see that except on her essence that was in the same place as her face and her eyes. It's hard to explain, but I was basically seeing her spirit and overlapping her physical body. And I could see the negativity she was holding. I could see it was the source of all of her suffering. I could also see that subconsciously, at the level of the spirit, at the level of the essence, she was holding on to the negativity by choice, but consciously, at the lower, like, mental self level, she did not know that that negativity was the source of her suffering. She did not know that she was holding on to it by choice. And in retrospect, later on doing all this work I'm doing, spiritual work, I realized that the negativity I was seeing in her, that's sort of the same negativity that I'm working to remove from myself. But anyways, that was one high experience I had. Basically, I saw her spiritual essence and her negativity and her beauty, and it was very strange. But nothing else happened in that experience. I just saw her differently, and then I never actually saw her again. I only saw her at that meeting, maybe. I don't think I ever saw her again. But yeah, so that was my first experience that I'm going to talk about. I don't remember actually if that happened first or the second one happened first, but anyways, that's the first one I'm talking about. Is I saw her essence and it was incredibly beautiful. So that's the first experience. The second experience, much different, completely unrelated. So the second experience is I was using the letting go technique that Dr. Hawkins teaches, and that I wrote a short book about, which I talked about in previous videos. But I was using the letting go technique to let go of fear, and I think I had been doing it for maybe a couple weeks, maybe like 3 or 4 weeks or so in a row. Like not every single day, but very often, maybe like 3 or 4 days a week for like 3 or 4 weeks. And when you're doing the letting go technique, I was doing it for fear and anxiety. And when you're doing it for fear, you feel the fear and like that it's working, but at the same time you don't really know if you don't actually feel yourself making progress in that moment. It takes a while to like realize, oh, I'm less fearful. Once you're going about your daily life or whatever you're afraid of. But in the moment, you don't really feel that you're making progress. So I was doing this for like a couple weeks. I was releasing all this fear, and I didn't know that I was making progress. I knew intellectually I was, but I wasn't like experiencing it. Like my level of consciousness wasn't changing. By the way, this was a while ago. This was back when I calibrated at like 370 something, I don't know, something like that, around the 370s. Something maybe it was back when I first. It was several months back. But I was in the 300 still. This was before I made my first YouTube video, which I was in the 390s in that. Okay. Yeah, so it was a while ago. But I was in like around 370 or something like that. And anyways, I was releasing all this fear for weeks. And then one night, I was laying in bed releasing more fear, and I guess I don't really know what triggered it, but I guess I surrendered like a final major block or something, and instantly I had this crazy experience where like I believe what it was is I released like a major block and tons of energy was flowing through my crown chakra. I think that's what it was in retrospect. I did some calibrations about it. That seems to be what it was. So I released like a major block in my crown chakra or something like that, and my level of consciousness actually jumped about a little more than 14 points in a single day. Now I know that sounds like ridiculous. You're going to be like, "Are you crazy? That doesn't happen." But this was the result of weeks of surrendering fear constantly, and I guess it culminated like a few days later. I calibrated myself, and I was like, "Oh my goodness! I rose 14. My calibration said I rose 14 points in a single day as a result, as a culmination of all that surrender." But anyways, the points are not what matters. The experience is what I'm talking about. So I had this incredible experience where this energy was flowing through my crown chakra, so much so that I actually got a physical headache from it, which is strange because I almost never get physical headaches. But during this experience, it was as if the mysteries of the universe were being revealed to me. And I think that's because the crown chakra is actually responsible for the understanding of how divinity works and how divinity creates the universe and stuff like that. Anyways, all I know is all these mysteries were being revealed to me about the universe, and I was having all these revelations, and it was kind of crazy. And I'm going to tell you about some of them, the ones I remember. So, while this experience was happening, I was like high on, Kundalini energy, like Dr. Hawkins would talk about, how he would feel it flowing up and down his spine and stuff. Well, I didn't feel it in my spine, but I felt like this expansion of my mind that was going crazy for about a day and a half or two. And yeah, so during this time, the mysteries of the universe were revealed to me, and I will tell you about them right now, what was revealed to me. So in my mind, I could see how the universe was created, the physical universe. A lot of scientists wonder what came before the Big Bang, or before, what they think is the beginning of the physical universe. And the answer is, in this physical universe, nothing came before the Big Bang. In fact, no physicality existed before the Big Bang because it had not emerged yet from what Dr. Hawkins calls the unmanifest, or the Godhead, or the power of God, or whatever you want to call it. So although there may be other universes, this one that we are in, this physical universe, before the Big Bang time, there was nothing. There was no physical universe, and then it arose from nothingness, although it came out of the power of God. And it began expanding, because that's what creation does. It doesn't just stay the same, it actually expands and becomes more of what it is. So I saw how the universe arose. It emerged from seemingly nothing, which, nothing in the physical sense. There was no space, there was no time, there was no physical universe. And then it just appeared out of nothing by the power of God. And another thing is that when it first appeared, and I've tested this with calibration and it seems to be correct, scientists mistakenly believe that all of the mass in the universe right now was crunched up into a tiny singularity. Well, that's not what I saw. What I saw is that the amount of mass in the universe actually is increasing over time, basically never ending. And so at the beginning of this physical universe, actually there was no mass. This universe started as a little tiny, infinitely tiny blotch of space. That space began expanding as new space arose, and eventually the energy of that space sort of began to condense into mass, which appeared out of nothingness as well. So the Big Bang theory of the universe is a little bit wrong. it thinks that all the mass and space of the universe today were crunched up in a little, black hole or whatever at the beginning of time. That's actually not correct. What is correct is that the universe arose as one iota, one tiny minuscule blotch of space, and then new space kept appearing and appearing and appearing, and then eventually matter condensed out of the energy of, I think matter is sort of made of the same energy of space or whatever, something like that, which is made of the power of God, basically. Um, and so the universe began as a tiny little blotch of space, and what I read online is that scientists, they currently think, they know the universe is expanding in physical size. What they think is that the space that exists is stretching out, but what is actually happening is that the space that exists is not stretching out at all. What's happening is new space is emerging from nothing, and there's a little bit of a difference. So old space is not stretching out. What I saw in my high experience, these mysteries being revealed to me, what I saw is that new space is appearing from nothing, which is actually from the power of God, but because the power of God is not physically measurable, it appears to be from nothing. And also, physical mass, even though the laws of conservation of energy and mass, even though that's true in the linear world, it's not true in the nonlinear power of God. And so the power of God is constantly manifesting new space and new matter in our physical universe. And I've tested that with calibration, and it does test true. Yeah, so it tests true. I tested several times back when I was having the revelation, and it was always true. So what that means is that although this physical universe had a beginning, I've asked with calibration, and it says it is unlikely to ever have an end. Now that this physical universe exists, it will expand forever, most likely, and the total size and mass of it will expand forever. Some scientists think that because the size is expanding, they think the mass is staying the same. So they think that the matter, all the planets will get so far away from each other that you'll never be able to see like another solar system again or something. But that's not accurate because new matter is actually being created in the vacuum of space, along with new space. So over many billions of years, new planets will form, and I think how it works is it appears as tiny little atoms in space, or something like that, and then eventually they condense into planets over billions of years. I don't know exactly the specifics, but this is generally what I saw. So new matter is appearing, new space is appearing. I also saw that how gravity works. Yeah, nobody can explain gravity. Well, at the linear level, they talk about, the space-time continuum is curved and blah, blah, this causes gravity, but we don't really know why. Well, what I saw is that the appearance of new space, the emergence, as Dr. Hawkins calls it, the emergence of new space in the universe is what causes gravity, because new space appears out in outer space away from matter, and it actually pushes the existing space, it pushes it towards the densest nearest object, which is matter. So the reason why objects are attracted to each other via gravity is that gravity is not a pulling force, it's not the mass pulling something to it. It's actually new space is appearing in outer space away from mass and pushing the existing space, including all of the physical objects within it, towards the densest objects. And it seems that the new space that emerges from the power of God, it emerges more significantly out in the less dense areas of outer space. It does not emerge as strongly within matter. So that's why when it emerges, it pushes against the currently existing space, and it pushes it all towards matter. That seems to be how it works. I tested it a lot back when I was having these revelations. That seems to be how it works. So gravity is not a pull, it is a push. It is caused by the emergence of new space pushing against old space and thus moving it towards matter. And as that old space moves towards matter, everything within that space, the physical objects, move as well. I guess that's it. I don't know the exact specifics because the thing is, this revelation I was having, it only lasted for like a day and a half. I was having all these revelations, but the high experience only lasted for like a day and a half before I began to sort of settle into it, and then the revelations went away. And after the revelations left, I was no longer able to see with spiritual vision all these things that I'm telling you. They were just left as memories of what I had seen. So right now, like I don't personally experience all these revelations I'm talking about right now, but I did personally experience them when this high state was occurring, and now I just have the memory of what was revealed to me. If I had stayed in that state permanently, I would probably be able to tell you all about, other things, other mysteries in the universe and stuff like that right now. But those are not being revealed to me right now. So all I have right now is the memory of what was revealed to me. So yeah, the physical universe, it started as one iota of space, and then it expanded with new space. New matter appears. So the universe, I've asked with calibration, and it says it is almost certain that it will continue to grow in both size and mass forever. It is not likely to end in like a big cataclysm, the heat death of the universe, whatever. I don't think that's how it works. That's not what I saw in that vision. If you calibrate, you can ask all these questions yourself with calibration, and you can tell me if your calibration says that I'm correct or not. But I'm just telling you what was revealed to me during my time. And there's another thing that happened during that high experience too, along with the revelations. I was, for a brief moment, like half a day or an hour or something, for not very long, I realized that I could change reality with my will, because my will was like interconnected with physical reality. And this, intellectually, this really doesn't make any sense. It's hard to explain because I'm not in that state anymore. But at the moment, I realized in that high experience, this was during the same time that all these revelations were going on. It happened over like a day and a half, I think. Yeah, like a day and a half. But I realized that I could change physical reality with my will. And I think the reason I could do this is because I had released that major block and all this energy was flowing through my crown chakra. And so I had like this abundance of energy that was pouring forth out of me. And the energy sort of acted as the power by which I could do this, I guess. I'm not really sure how it works. Maybe someday if I get back to that state, I'll tell you. But I don't really know how it works. But yeah, I realized I could change things with my will. And I changed one thing that I won't talk about. And I saw a specific actual physical evidence of it changing in the world. And then the second thing I changed, which I will talk about, is in that moment. Now keep in mind, during the time this event was happening, I did not realize what was going on, really, until afterwards when the days following when I asked a bunch of questions with calibration. And I also did not realize that it was temporary. I was like, oh my god, what's going, imagine if someone, they took you and they threw you on a desert island and you're like, what's going on? You'd be freaking out. Well, I was kind of like freaking out, but in a good way. Yeah, so I didn't really get my bearings until after the experience faded. So I'm just explaining why I chose to do what I did. So while I was realizing I could change reality with my will, instead of doing anything really important and making my life awesome with my will or something, I had a thought. I was like reading text messages from my girlfriend or something like that back then. Well, same girlfriend, but I was reading text messages or something, and she had been complaining to me for like months that she wanted a raise because she was underpaid at her job, and that her boss was very stingy and blah blah blah. Anyways, I was sitting down and I was like, thinking about all these revelations that were occurring to me, and then it just occurred to me, wait a second, I can change that with my will. I can give her a raise with my will. And I thought, oh, I love my girlfriend, I'm going to help her out. And in that moment, I just willed it. It was almost as if I changed my mind or my thought, and it changed my will, which I could see in front of me as part of the world. It's hard to explain. It's almost as if, like Dr. Hawkins says, like he talks about magnets and stuff, how they kind of relate to fields of power. It's almost as if I changed a field of power within myself, and I could see that it automatically changed the world in the outside of myself. Kind of like turning on a magnet inside yourself, and it changes the stuff around you. Well, in that moment, I just said I could give my girlfriend a raise, and I just willed it to happen with all this, I guess, all this energy that was flowing through my crown chakra. And that's the only thing I did. I did one other thing, which I'm not going to talk about for personal reasons. But then I also willed a raise for my girlfriend, and literally, no joke, the next day, the next morning, she texted me and said, "Guess what? My boss gave me a raise." So it literally had results in the world. It was not just like, oh, I'm going to will this to happen and maybe I'll feel good about it. It was actually like I willed it to happen just spontaneously. It came to my mind, hey, I can help her out by doing this. And the next day she contacted me, and we were not living together at the time. She texted me and said, my boss gave me a raise. And I said, oh, like part of me was like, of course you got a raise. I made it happen. But the other part of me was like, oh my God, it actually happened. You know, it's like simultaneously part of me knew it would happen and part of me was shocked. But yeah, anyways, this whole experience with using my will to change reality and having all these revelations about the universe and blah, 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 it only lasted about a day and a half, and then it went away. And I was still adjusting to my level of consciousness being much higher, because like I said, it jumped like 14 points in a single day, which is incredible. But yeah, I was still adjusting to the new higher level of consciousness, but this fantastic high experience, it faded away. And nothing like that has happened to me since then. I do have, like I've said in past videos, anytime you surrender negativity, I do have little mini revelations when you realize new truth as a result of letting go of negativity. So every little mini revelation, it's like a tiny little miniature version of what I experienced that day. I think that day I just had such a crazy experience because my level of consciousness rose so much at once. Which I assume is because I released like a major block that I was unaware of as a result of surrendering fear. So that's cool. Another lesson from that is that if you think you're not making progress surrendering, just keep surrendering, and you know, maybe someday your level of consciousness will jump 14 points in a single day, or something crazy like that. I don't know. Dr. Hawkins has talked about how some people can surrender like a major block and go up, you know, like 100 points instantly or something. Well, I had, I guess, like a miniature version of that with 14 point something points in one day. But like I said, it's not the numbers that matter. That's just like a measurement tool. It's the personal truth that you experience that matters. So anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say about those two experiences. Those are the only experiences I would say are high experiences in my life. But of course, every time you raise your level of consciousness, it feels like it's a new high for you because it's, you know, it's new truth for you. And in retrospect, that second experience, that one with the revelations, it felt like just a major version of every time my level of consciousness has increased in the past. And in the past, when I hit 350 and also when I hit 250, there were similar periods of not necessarily like revelations about the universe or anything like that, but there were similar periods of like being shocked. It was like, you know, like Dr. Hawkins talks about God shock. At 250 and at 350, there was similar sort of shock, and that's what this high experience was. I was shocked. At the time, I didn't really know what was happening. I didn't know that it was temporary. I didn't even think about it being temporary. I was like, oh my goodness, is this? You know, I was just seeing reality for how it was. You know. But the experience was temporary, and now all I have is the memories of what was revealed to me. But of course, with calibration, we can ask about those memories. I can ask about them. I can say, is that true in reality? And it seems to be the case. So those are my two high experiences. I don't think I've ever had any other experiences that I would call high experiences that were like temporary highs. All I have is, stories of, oh, I transcended, this major level and I had this revelation or whatever. But those are permanent experiences when you raise your level of consciousness permanently. And now I'm going to tell you about what I call a low experience, I guess. And that is that while I was several months ago, when I calibrated in the 390s, I actually had the experience of making a spiritual mistake. And my level of consciousness actually decreased temporarily. It would have been permanent, but because I realized it and I handled it, I fixed it. But I'll tell you about it. Basically, I'm not going to tell you the details because it's very personal stuff. But I was faced with a temptation that I knew was wrong to engage in. And this is, I think I calibrated at about 397 or 398 at the time. Something like 398. I was faced with a temptation and I indulged in that temptation. And it was nothing like, nothing, whatever your mind's going to, it wasn't that crazy. It was just something stupid and small. But it was a temptation and I engaged in it, and instantly, as soon as I made the decision to fall to that temptation, I knew that I had done something wrong. And at this point, I had already been calibrating myself like every day and stuff. I knew I calibrated like 398, I think, at the time. And I calibrated myself, and I was at 395, and I was like, oh my, wait, what just happened, And I literally had just made a spiritual mistake, giving into a temptation. And my level of consciousness had fallen 3 points, about 3 points, from 398 point something to 395.0. I remember that. It hit 395. And I was like freaking out, which, makes sense because when your level of consciousness falls, that means you've introduced new negativity into your mind or your spirit or whatever. So I gave into a temptation, and it was a spiritual error. And that moment I was freaking out. I was like, God, please forgive me, all this stuff. And in that moment I realized, okay, I have to make this right. And I did my normal testing method for negativity. And it turns out that I had introduced an emotional field of shame into my mind. Now, normally with the alphabet calibration, with all that stuff I've talked about in the past, the process is identifying negative emotions and surrendering them so that as your level of consciousness goes up, you lose all these negative emotions. Well, by falling for this temptation, I had introduced a new emotion of shame into my mind. I was ashamed that I had fallen for this temptation, basically. And it was a powerful field of shame that brought down my level of consciousness from 3 points, from 398 to 395. And in that moment, I, asked forgiveness from God, and I surrendered that shame, and I returned to normal. And I in the process of 30 minutes or an hour or something like that, I returned to normal, and I tested with calibration. Is this shame gone and all that stuff, and it was gone. But so it only lasted for like an hour or something, where my level of consciousness fell temporarily. But if I had not dealt with that shame, it would have been a permanent fall until I would deal with it later. But yeah, so. And after I surrendered the shame, I realized that experience was like a great gift, actually. Because Dr. Hawkins has warned in the past about not giving in to different spiritual temptations, which people in the past have, given into and fallen great deals, hundreds of points, fallen down below 200. And what I realized after that temporary fall of mine by 3 points, I realized that it was like a warning to me. It was saying, this is what is at stake if you fall to temptation in the future. It was saying, do not make this mistake again. And I also realized, now that I know the consequence of falling to temptation personally, from personal experience, not just a warning from a teacher, but it actually happened to me. Now, if I fall to temptation again, the fall will be more drastic because it will be a more serious error. Because now I know how serious of an error it is. And it is the most serious error you can make in life, is to lower your calibration by making spiritual errors. Because the source of your joy in life is the truth within you, and when you fall to spiritual temptations, you abandon that truth and you get filled up with these negative energy fields, which are very emotionally painful. Like when I fell from 398 to 395, I wasn't just freaking out about the number. I was like freaking out. Like when I gave into that temptation, I knew that I had made a major fuck up. Sorry to curse, but that's what it was. It was a big mistake. And I knew it right away. Like inside me, I was like freaking out. I was like, this is wrong. I should not have done that. And I tested myself, and I was like, oh my god, my calibration lower, and I was freaking out. But regardless of the calibration, like I was freaking out anyways, because I knew I'd done something wrong. But yeah, so that was like it was like a spiritual warning to me. It was like, this is what happens when you fall to a temptation, and do not do it again. So now I know. Now I'm kind of like, I've been wary of, certain temptations ever since. I've been like, okay, now I know not to do that. Do not give in to certain things that are tempting you. And Dr. Hawkins warned about them. Actually, I tested a while back. I'm going to go ahead and read something on my phone real quick because I wrote notes about it. I tested months ago, and I wrote it down. It turns out what I believe is the 4 biggest temptations. And I actually ranked them with calibration. I asked which one is the biggest one for spiritual students, and said temptation number 1 is fame, temptation number 2 is power, temptation number 3 is sex, and temptation number 4 is money. So fame, power, sex, and money. Those are like the big 4 temptations that spiritual students fall to. And the temptation that I fell to was related to one of those. I'll let you guess. But it was a temporary fall, thankfully. It was a learning experience. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to talk about in this video. Is 2 high experiences, which were both incredible in their own unique way, and 1 low experience, which was actually, I'm glad that now that I'm over it, I'm glad that I had that experience, because it taught me a very valuable lesson. Do not give in to spiritual temptations. It's not worth it. Getting some little, whatever it is, money, power, sex, whatever, is not worth giving up the happiness and joy that comes from spiritual truth within you. So that's all I have for this video. Thank you for listening to my story, and I'll be back in the future with another video.